Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. I'm Chris Shea. I'm a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services serving customers in the enterprise ad tech and marketing space. Joining me today is Oliver Myers, who leads business development for Amazon Q Business for independent software vendors, ISVs. Oliver, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Tell me a bit about Q Business.
Yeah. Q Business is your Gen AI powered work assistant. It's a little less than a year old. It was GA'd in April of last year, and it's really meant to be sort of a democratization moment for Gen AI, and that anybody and everybody that is a knowledge worker, including myself, can use it using the enterprise knowledge sources that you have at your company to be more impactful, be more productive, and get work done faster. And so it's been really exciting, and we've seen a lot of broad adoption, and it's just a really great way for people to continue to interact with generative AI and get the most out of it.
I have a question about basically what you did before you came to AWS as well, right? So what brought you to this point?
Yeah, so, not the typical story arc, I would say. I actually used to be a lawyer. I went to law school. I then lived in Istanbul, Turkey for 3 years, and I was doing international contract law there. But it was in my journey back to the US, when I got back to San Francisco in 2015, I started working for a computer vision startup. And I knew really not that much about AI. And I always tell people this because I hope that I am sometimes a testament that it shouldn't be a scary topic. I think it's something that everybody can learn if they give it time. And I worked at a computer vision startup, and it was a small team, and I just peppered everybody with questions to become knowledgeable about it. And my role was business development and getting customers to adopt the products that we were developing. And it really forced me to dive deep into the technology around, building models that allow you to extract rich information from videos and images for a bunch of different use cases. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And then I got I moved to AWS after that and worked on Amazon Recognition, which is a managed computer vision service from AWS. I also then got Textract to be part of my portfolio, which is for intelligent document processing. It's a managed AI service that allows you to extract text and information from documents. And then a little bit later in my AWS journey, I also managed from a global go-to-market standpoint, Amazon Transcribe, which is a automated speech recognition service. So really was deep in the managed services for AI, and I actually think that was been a great conduit and learning for what I'm doing now with Q Business, because that is a managed offering and really targeting personas that don't need to be super proficient at machine learning and how those sort of the underpinning of how those systems are built, but know that AI will bring them value and drive better productivity if they adopt it.
What a brilliant story. I mean, going from law in Istanbul to now working with generative AI. I mean, what a great path you've taken to get here. I mean, I imagine that brings a lot of different perspectives as you're going through your daily work too.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's good. And I always view myself, we talk to line of business. We talk to people who are trying to solve business challenges. Gen AI is not always top of mind. Increasingly it is, which is great, but I tried to use those unique experiences in my career to really be a translator to them of what this all really means, what's the value you can really derive, and to sort of, have them not be worried about it or view it as something they can't grok or understand. So I am very glad that I've had that background and a non-technical one for a portion of my career too, because I think that helped me realize that it is a subject matter that anybody can get into and really start to love.
Absolutely. And it sounds like, really Q Business is a tremendous way to really have that power of generative AI expanded, not just within, the purview of your, what you have on AWS, but external sources as well with connectors.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me a bit about connectors.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. When we launched Q Business, one of the things that we wanted to do was take out the heavy lifting of moving fast, right? And so one of the most important pieces of generative AI still, like AI ML, is data. And to be able to ask questions and summarize content, you need that content to be available. And so when we launched Q Business, we really wanted to make it based on the enterprise data that you use, that people use in their work life. And so when you create a Q Business application, and it's all managed for you, it's a nice no-code, low-code experience in the AWS console. One of the steps you now have is to select from 40 plus native data connectors to populate the back end of your web UI and your application, your Q Business application. Things like Salesforce, Slack, email, calendar, etc. You can bring in to your Q Business application and now start to query that data and get started. So it really, those connectors play such an important part because, again, that's also something that AWS maintains on behalf of the customer so that you don't have to do that heavy lifting of setting that all up. So within a few clicks, and it does not take long to build a Q Business application, to give it a user and to put in some data, you can quickly have a generative AI assistant ready for you to start getting going.
Brilliant. And tell me more about what that application interface looks like from a front end standpoint. If I'm an end user of Q Business, what does that look like? Is this like a chatbot that I click through?
Yeah. So you have there's actually now two options, right? When it was just launched, what you can spin up after you add your data sources is a web UI. And that web UI is very, again, meant to be sort of end user, simplistic for the end user and easy to interact with, but it has an area where you can put in your prompt. You can see the chat history. It retains the context of the conversation. So if you ask one question of the data, it won't forget what that question was, and it'll allow you to have that sort of string. It comes with built-in RAG. Again, that's managed for you. So you get the cited source of where that answer came from. You can even have some interaction with the interface. There's a thumbs up, thumbs down button. Within that interface as well, Q Business also gives you the opportunity to take actions. When we launched, it was 4 actions via 4 third-party applications. Now there's more than 50 actions across 10 applications. So I can say, create a Salesforce opportunity or cut a Jira ticket and assign it to Chris, all within in the web UI. And also, while you're spinning that up and creating the application, you can, of course, set guardrails, what not to answer, the relevancy of content that you want pulled, right? So a lot of people have a temporal element to what they think is important. I want content from the past year, not 5 years ago. So you can have a web UI spun up. And then actually last year in about October, we launched the ability for you to deploy that web UI to a website or external applications, because we had questions from or feedback from application vendors that said, hey, we want to take that web UI and potentially customize it a bit and deploy Q Business more front facing to our end users versus just internal consumption.
And more recently, I've noticed there's been a lot of exciting developments with Q Business for like browser extensions, right? There's so many different ways that you can interact with Q Business now. If you could walk them through the different types of interactions that we offer now for Q Business, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. One is that web UI. Like that is a critical piece for a lot of our end users. But we also have continued to invest in making Q Business live where you do work, right? So we have browser extensions now. I have one running on Chrome on my computer that you can now leverage Q Business as you're opening up pages, and you can take that content and do Q&A, do summarization. So that's been a really big hit. Last year, also in Q3, we worked with Slack and did a release in their sort of app marketplace where you can choose to have Q Business be the Gen AI powered assistant that you deploy within Slack. So that's a new area of real estate for Q Business. And another area that we've also sort of expanded the footprint of Q Business is the Q Index, which was launched at reInvent. It was part of Matt Garman's keynote. And that now allows third-party applications, ISVs, to pull data from Q Business applications and retrieve it in a way that it can be shown within their Gen AI assistants. And that's great for end users because it now allows them to bring that Q Business data with them as they're using, say, a video conferencing tool or sort of leaving the Q Business ecosystem.
Brilliant. And I think to step back a bit too, just at a 1,000-foot view for Q Business, who's it designed for?
Yeah, great question. It's really meant for knowledge workers and sort of business analyst persona types, right? And if anybody who's watching this has ever seen our generative AI stack, Q Business is at the top of that stack because it's a managed service and it's really targeting those professionals that may not be developers or may not have Gen AI expertise and really giving them a managed way to get started with Gen AI fast and be more productive. So it's really that knowledge worker persona type that is the user of Q Business.
Understood. Makes perfect sense. And I think that's one of the great benefits of Q Business, right? Is you don't necessarily need to be, extremely technical to use it and get the value out of it.
100%. Yep. And as always, and our stack has gone through many permutations since I've been here, that's what that top layer is for. It's meant to be that movement into products and features that are really for anybody, and to get the most out of AI ML versus sort of the lower end parts of the stack, which are maybe more developer or ML practitioner focused.
Of course. And I think that's really a great case to be made for how many different personas that are, going to be able to get the value out of this too.
Definitely.
Very exciting.
Definitely.
So one of the things that I think is really fascinating about Q Business is how it's able to take all these disparate data sources and provide a unified front end from which users can query and get answers about their data. Tell me more about the problem statement that arose that inspired AWS to create Q Business.
Yeah, I think like a lot of things with generative AI, it's really about productivity and the ROI gains from being more productive, right? So we all face challenges with getting the right data at the right time in the right way and iterating on that data, summarizing that data, creating templates for that data in a way that help us move fast. I mean, we all kind of live and breathe it with the amount of emails we send and amount of content and writing that we do. So I think productivity is really at the heart of Q Business and really at the heart of it being your easily deployable Gen AI powered assistant. I am going to use it as my Gen AI teammate to get work done faster. And I think I'll point out another thing, which is, I talked a little bit about that knowledge worker. And I think that we, tend to think of that maybe in a certain scenario. Maybe that is a BD like myself or somebody in financial, the financial department or marketing. But we also have a lot of users of Q Business that are in engineering and those types of technical departments, right? They may know how to code and can build Q Business, build Gen AI applications themselves in some cases, but really that doesn't take away from the fact that they need a knowledge assistant as well, right? When you think about the myriad of tickets being cut and the jobs to be done on that in those departments as well, it really is just about that sort of getting the most from your enterprise knowledge base for those teams to move faster and be more productive, and the cost savings and material ROI that can be derived therefrom.
Yeah. And you bring up a brilliant point where even though you don't necessarily need technical chops to get the most out of Q Business, that doesn't mean that it's limited to only folks who don't have technical chops. To your point exactly, right? If you're an engineer, front-end engineer, back-end engineer, software developer, and you want to very quickly at a glance get information about Jira tickets that are coming in or information that you have in a Confluence repo somewhere.
Yeah.
Q Business is an excellent fit for that.
And you forget too, I think, working so closely with the solutions architects and the technical stakeholders on the product team, like there's so much in technical documentation too, right? Being able to pull that and find the right information quickly it's essential really in every department, regardless of the other skill sets that you may have.
For sure. And I think that's part of what makes it so exciting is, I think this is just such a major wealth of information that you can gain so quickly now without having to manually go through and sift through documentation. You yourself. I mean, it's a huge time saver, right?
Correct.
So I'd love to hear a bit more about some use cases that you've seen for Q Business as well, right? So is there anything that you've seen that's been particularly interesting in your travels in the world of Q Business that's really made a valuable impact?
Yeah, I think I want to say that the adoption of Q Business, based on what we just talked about, it is really broad. It goes to sort of every sort of vertical type, and there's lots of different personas that can get the value out of it. But I would say that use cases are critical, right? When we're having those conversations with customers, they really want the focus on those use cases. And so there's a bunch that have emerged. I think one is just kind of enterprise knowledge search and management, right? There are stakeholders responsible for that, and that enterprise data and being able to query it fast and get that data is important for a lot of sub use cases, but that kind of lives under this umbrella of those enterprise sort of knowledge management and search use cases. I would say another is sort of IT management. Again, what we talked about with the engineering teams, like there is so much in being productive in the engineering org around documentation, around tickets being cut. And with Q Business's ability to take actions, also like cutting a Jira ticket, we see use cases there for engineering departments, along with keeping their Confluence data in that sort of Q Business application. I think another interesting one is in sort of HR and onboarding. I made a joke the other day at an event that, like, I wished I had that for some of my new hires, because they, finding all the information to be a great Amazonian can take time. And what we're seeing at other companies is they feel that pain too, right? And so if I could have a Q Business application for my new hires to find important information as they're onboarding and getting up to speed, I might be able to accelerate the time that they can take a lot of great actions and be really performant. I think some others that we're starting to see too is, in sort of marketing and campaign planning, and how can I think about previous work that I've done, pull me content from a previous marketing plan, so I can understand what I should do for this year's marketing plan. Same could be for go-to-market or BD stakeholders. So those are some of the use cases that we see. There's a litany of them, but I think those are where we see some replicability of the use cases and value being derived.
Awesome. And I think that gives a really great spread of all the different areas that Q Business can benefit folks too, right? Anywhere from sales and marketing to human resources to engineering. There's a lid for every pot. And I think that's one of the great benefits of Q Business.
Correct. And as you start to, one thing I'll add too is one of the investments that we're making is being able to interrogate and interact more with structured data, right? When Q Business was initially launched, and like a lot of Gen AI assistants, it was really focused on unstructured data. But with structured data, tables and content like that, or Excel files, that is really important also for other departments and like financial operations and even C-suite for keeping track of sort of P&L and information like that. So we have started to do more there, where you can now within Q Business interact with structured data and also interrogate sort of forms of data you couldn't before, like pie charts and tables within a PDF. So that's been a really beneficial one, and I think it's expanding the use cases and possibilities of value that these customers can gain from Q Business.
Absolutely. And that's a brilliant segue into my next question, which is, as someone who's interested in Q Business, what do you recommend for them to get started quickly?
Yeah, 100%. I would recommend everybody get started with Q Business. Me, my team, all of us use Q Business, not only just through the plugins, but we've created Q Business applications, and it's great because it kind of becomes addicting. And right, we even have applications like I built one for NFL stats that I query. That's really cool. But I have others for work as well. So I would say to get started, all you need is an AWS account. You go to the console, and literally it's a step-by-step process to get started. That's the easy part, right? So there's no barrier to really getting started today, and you can do that. But as you're doing that, what I would also tell people is to think about repetitive tasks. Think about areas that they get bogged down in their work life that they'd like to improve, and think about the data sources that they could leverage or need to leverage to get that done. Because getting started is easy, and if you have a use case that you want to drive towards to solve a problem, it becomes even easier and more powerful.
Makes perfect sense. I really want to learn more about this NFL stats use case for Q-Business that you had. Could you tell me a little bit more?
Yeah, in the early days, I'll be quite honest, right? I came from 5 years of working on global go-to-market for AI ML services, different services. And when we came into Q-Business, one of the first things me and my team did were create Q-Business applications. And so I went to a publicly available data source on statistics over the last 40 years of NFL stats, from touchdowns thrown to interceptions. And I was able to put that in an S3 bucket. S3 is a connector into Q-Business. And I connected that S3 data to my Q-Business application, assigned a few users on my team, including myself, and spun up the web UI. And within, 20 to 30 minutes, we had a fully functioning Gen AI application that could ask questions about the last 40 years of NFL stats. I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan, so I mostly focused on, the glory days, like how many interceptions did Merton Hanks have, things like that. But really fun, and again, not a business use case, but I think really exposed to all of us as we were early in our Q-Business journey, how fast we could move and how open the possibilities were really to solve cool use cases.
That's an awesome story. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious too, if you've heard kind of in your travels, any other similar use cases that, maybe aren't enterprise use cases, right? But just a very fun, creative way to leverage the power of Q-Business.
Yeah. Again, another one that I saw that I really liked was, and again, this goes back to sort of personal passions. We had a gentleman that I work with who's a pilot, and he wanted to be able to get better information about weather patterns and flight data that he could pull, again, publicly available, into Q-Business so that he could start to analyze it and interrogate it and figure out where the most optimal flight paths are and sort of weather patterns for certain regions of the country. And so again, just another cool use case that was very personal to that person and took 30 minutes to get stood up and ready to go, and something that he continues to use today. So again, I think the power of Q-Business really is the speed with which you can move to be productive and get things done.
One area that I want to focus on as well, if you have a customer that's interested in running, let's say, a proof of concept with Q-Business, right? What are some common patterns for success that you've seen that can make that proof of concept, very impactful for them?
Absolutely. I think there's a few things. I think one is the use case, right? We always come back to the use case. I think in AI, like lots of different lines of work, the use case is so important because you want to understand the problem you're solving and really start to look at the ROI of what certain technologies can do to solve that problem. So I think understanding the use case is really important for a POC. I think taking inventory of what you do today to solve that problem or that use case is incredibly important, because I think many companies and enterprises underestimate the cost or the time it takes to do certain types of use cases and certain types of sort of data interaction. So I think that's number two. I think the third is, based on what you do today, setting benchmarks for what success looks like, right? And there's, like any POC, there's a lot that goes into what you think is success. Part of it could be accuracy. Part of it could be the speed of the response. Some people might look at latency elements, but the other is, did I get sort of the right answers at the right time to the right people to solve the use case? And how impactful was that from end to end, right? That temporal element of, can I do something faster than I used to be able to do? I think those are probably three core elements to the POC. But what I also tell people, because this is Gen AI, is in a POC, keep an eye out for things you didn't even think you could do before, right? So you're doing something today. It's a certain task. It takes a lot of time, and you think you know how to solve it A to B because of the way you solve it today, but there might be a better way to solve it. And Gen AI can really show you that pathway in a lot of ways once you start the POC. So I always tell them to keep an open mind too about what they think the right answer should be in terms of the results.
Makes perfect sense. And I think that's a great way to put customers on a track for success when they're looking to give Q Business a shot.
And it also, too, I think opens up the conversation around other use cases, right? If their first POC is really focused on one use case, really the best thing to do is have that POC be a conduit to more use case discussions. Oh, if I could solve this problem like this, maybe I can solve that problem, which is really important. And again, part of that flexibility and thinking that we try to talk to them about.
Of course. Awesome. Thank you so much. So in your eyes, what are some of the biggest undifferentiated heavy lifting tasks that Q Business can help with on a daily basis?
I think number one is, and this goes a little bit to the data connectors, is the aggregation of data, step one. Because, right, we can solve problems when we do every day, but it requires us to go a bunch of different places to solve it. So one, there's huge undifferentiated lifting in us managing the 40 plus data connectors that we support, but also its ability to be pulled into one application is really important. I think number two, once you have that data aggregation, the questions and answers that you'll get, right, are so much richer and so much more nuanced to help you be more productive. And so there is this undifferentiated sort of heavy lifting that you can remove by being able to answer questions faster and move faster, because, right, we're all kind of jumping around place to place. The other, I think, is in actions, right? Now, using sort of a football parlance, like Q Business, I sometimes see as the quarterback, right? If I can start using Q Business to be able to take action in Jira or take action in Salesforce, that's really amazing for me, because now I don't have to go create that opportunity. I don't have to go to another application to set that up. I can do that all from Q Business. So I think those are really cool elements that Q Business has that remove sort of steps in the process or undifferentiated heavy lifting for end users. There's an element to all of this too about the undifferentiated heavy lifting of developing a generative AI assistant as well. And so for the developers and machine learning practitioners that have been tasked with building a Gen AI powered work assistant, now there's an easy pathway to do it just through Q Business, right? It's managed for you. It's easily deployable. It has those connectors. Guardrails are built in. It has agentic functionality. So really, that's another key point I'd mentioned. There's the efficiency gains for the end user of the web UI and the experience, but there's also the efficiency gains by it being a managed service for those tasked with deploying Gen AI.
Awesome. I think that covers such a great variety of tasks that the average use case, let's say the average user, they're not going to wake up in the morning and go, oh boy, I can't wait to cut Jira tickets. It's not something that generally happens, right?
Correct.
So I think having that ability to really remove a lot of those blockers, right? And in such a way that makes it so much easier than, if you were to build a similar system completely from scratch, from the ground up, the investment there can be hugely prohibitive. So being able to use a managed front-end service, right? Or the ability to use a managed service like Q Business to really remove a lot of those blockers, do a lot of heavy lifting for you. I mean, what a value add.
Mm-hmm.
So that's brilliant. Thank you very much. So what features of Q Business have you found to be particularly useful in your own day-to-day life?
Yeah, great question. I think we do a lot of writing at Amazon, as maybe some people with this podcast would be familiar with or not, but we do a lot of writing. And one of the things I use, especially with the Chrome plugin now that I have, is being able to summarize content, but also not just from hey, I've received a lot of data, how do I summarize it and think about it, but also as I'm producing content, I also, for my management and my leadership, want them to be able to get really the nitty gritty first. Yes, they can read the rest of it, but being able to do summarization also of the content that I produce and put it in a format that matches the standards of who I'm producing it for, whether it's email, whether it's a quarterly business review or a weekly business review, has been really impactful. And so that's one thing I like. I think the agentic features are so important. I mean, it's a massive investment that we've made, going from 4 actions and 4 applications to over 50 actions in 10 plus applications. Like, that's a lot more value that people can drive. And we've also, this may seem simplistic, but we've also improved the UI and user experience of those actions so that it's just a drop down menu and you can really better affect and take action the way you want to, and without it being confusing. I also think too, where just as a business developer, it's not just about meeting with customers. There's a lot of data analysis that we do. So the structured data components that we can now interrogate with QBusiness, and being able to leverage different document types and visuals within documents to interrogate that is really cool. Further, I'm really excited about this because I used to work in computer vision. Just last week, we launched the support for sort of video uploads and that kind of medium for analysis. And so that's really cool because it gives just it goes beyond sort of textual structured data and now lets you analyze sort of other pieces of content. So there's a lot we're investing in, and I think those are just some of the ones that are exciting to me and useful to me and beneficial to me. But there's a ton of other things that we have from QBusiness. So again, just another recommendation for people to go start using it and getting their hands dirty.
Awesome. I think that's one of the last things I want to cover here as well, is for customers who are interested in getting started with QBusiness, what resources are available to help accelerate that path?
Yeah, a great question. There's a lot, right? From a self-help standpoint, there's lots of resources that are available online. And I don't just mean the technical documentation. Our AWS stakeholders, from BDs like myself to SAs to the product teams, are creating blogs, quick start templates, workshops, etc., for you to consume content on QBusiness so that you can get started yourself. But that we're also not just going to leave you to your own devices. And so we have solutions architects that can come help guide your developers on how to leverage and implement QBusiness. We also have professional services stakeholders that can not only help you with the deployment, but can also help you become successful. They can help you scale your adoption of QBusiness, which is a really important point because we want the end users to view this as their companion, not something that they, reject or don't want to use in their daily lives. And through that, like any of us, is education that's required. And so we have not only our SAs, but professional services, BDs, that can help them really think about how to use it and how to get the best out of it. And then for various other stakeholders, and depending the scenarios, there's other pieces of support that we can offer that help them move faster in terms of incentives or credits and things like that. So there's a lot that people can take advantage of to get started with QBusiness. And I would say don't hesitate to also reach out to folks like me, other people in our QBusiness world, to get the help that you need.
Brilliant. So again, right, I think that's one of the major takeaways from today's conversation is we've got excellent technical documentation of how you can get started with QBusiness. We have a step-by-step getting started guide as well on our own AWS documentation page. It's got everything you need to get up and running with QBusiness quickly. So again, for all the folks listening out there, if you're interested in getting started with Amazon QBusiness, please visit our Getting Started page on our AWS website. It's included in the description below as well.